The old man everyone avoided turned out to be the key to a 40-year secret. I bought an abandoned dairy by the lake, expecting dust, silence, maybe a broken pipe or two. I didn't expect flashlights cutting through the darkness, or a full security team already waiting inside. And when I found an old man hiding in the shadows, clutching a wooden box like his life depended on it, I had no idea I was stepping into a forgotten war, a buried secret, and a twist that would change everything. The night air off East Lake carried a sharp bite, the kind that slipped beneath a coat and settled into your bones. Naomi Brooks pulled her jacket tighter as she stepped out of the community kitchen's back door. It was nearly 10 p.m., long past the hour she was supposed to clock out. But things always ran late when you were feeding people who didn't have anywhere else to go. She didn't mind. She never had. She'd grown up on these streets, in these same cold winds. And she knew what it meant to be hungry, to be tired, to be invisible. Her bus stop sat across from the old dairy plant, a hulking block of rusted steel and shattered windows crouched beside the lake. Locals whispered about it. Some said ghosts lived there. Others said troublemakers used it to hide. At night the place swallowed light, even from the street lamps. Most folks crossed to the other sidewalk rather than walk beside it. Naomi didn't have that luxury tonight. She adjusted the strap of her backpack and started down the cracked sidewalk. That was when she saw him. An elderly man sat hunched on a concrete barrier near the chain-link fence, his thin shoulders shaking with each gust. He wore an old wool coat that looked like it had once been expensive, though now it sagged off him like a forgotten relic. His hands clutched a small wooden box to his chest, as if it were the only warm thing he had in the world. The rest of him trembled, his fingers, his jaw, even his breath. People walked past him without slowing. A couple glanced over and quickened their steps. A man with headphones didn't notice him at all. Naomi stopped. Something in the way he was holding that box, so tight it might have been life itself, tugged at her. She recognized that quiet, sinking kind of fear. She'd seen it in her mother's eyes the night they lost their apartment, in her own reflection after too many people told her she wouldn't ever be more than the kitchen girl. Naomi stepped closer. "Sir? Are you all right?" The man didn't answer. He didn't even look up at her. His breath came out in shallow, broken puffs. His knuckles, white against the wood, shook harder. "Sir," she said more gently, crouching down to his level. "You're freezing out here. Let me help you up. There's a warm place just across the street." Her fingers brushed his sleeve, and he flinched like he hadn't expected human touch in years. He finally lifted his face and Naomi's heart stumbled. His eyes were glassy with cold, his cheeks drawn tight. But there was something else there too. A deep, exhausted grief. A grief that had been carried far too long. "It's all right," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." Before he could speak, a flash of white light sliced across the pavement. Naomi jerked her head toward the dairy building. A beam of a flashlight swept along the inside of a broken window, slow, methodical, searching. She froze. The old man stiffened beneath her hand. Then another beam, and another. 3 lights. Moving. Her pulse kicked. Shadows shifted behind the windows. Tall, sharp silhouettes like men in tactical gear. One stepped closer to the window frame, just enough for the glow of a headset earpiece to catch the light. Who the hell would be inside a dead dairy plant at this hour? The old man's grip tightened on the wooden box. His breath trembled. "Sir," Naomi whispered, "are they looking for you?" The silhouette at the window paused, head turning slightly, as if listening. Naomi held her breath. A second silhouette raised what looked like a flashlight, except brighter, stronger, the kind used in search operations. It flicked across the parking lot. Naomi pressed herself lower, shielding the old man with her body. The beam stopped, hovered. Her heart pounded so loudly she worried they'd hear it. The old man whispered, barely audible, "I shouldn't have come back." And just like that, fear rippled up Naomi's spine, cold and sudden. Whoever those men were, they weren't here by accident. And whatever this trembling stranger was caught up in, it was bigger than a cold night on a deserted sidewalk. Another beam swept past them, closer this time. Naomi tightened her grip on the man's arm. "We need to move," she whispered. "Now!" But the box clutched to his chest. He wouldn't let it go, wouldn't loosen his grasp, wouldn't stand. Behind the shattered windows, one silhouette tapped the side of his headset, nodded, then turned toward the exit. They were coming out. Naomi's throat tightened. Her bus was still blocks away. The streets were empty. She had no idea who these people were, or why they were here, or why they were scanning the night like hunters. But there was one thing she did know. This old man had no one else. And for reasons she couldn't explain, not even to herself, she wasn't leaving him. Naomi braced her shoulder under his and whispered, "Sir, please, we have to go." The dairy plant door screeched open in the dark. Footsteps hit the pavement. And that was the moment Naomi realized. This night wasn't anywhere near normal. And whatever she had just stepped into, it was only beginning. The footsteps from the dairy plant echoed across the cracked parking lot, steady and purposeful. Naomi could feel the old man trembling harder beneath her hand. His breath came in shallow, jittery pulls, each one colder than the last. She glanced at the approaching shadows. 3 men, maybe 4, moving with the discipline of people who didn't need to raise their voices to be dangerous. Naomi swallowed hard. Her instincts told her to run, but the old man's fingers curled desperately around her sleeve. He couldn't move on his own. He could barely stay upright. "Okay," she whispered, steadying her voice. "Just hold on to me." She guided him across the street, each step feeling heavier than the last. The wind off the lake cut through her jacket, sharp as a blade. Streetlights flickered overhead, throwing pale yellow halos on the pavement. Behind them, a flashlight beam swept the road again. Naomi quickened her pace, half dragging the old man until they reached the warm glow of the community kitchen's side entrance. She pushed the door open with her shoulder, slipped inside with him, and eased it shut. The clang of metal hitting metal rang out as the latch locked. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding. Inside, the air smelled of broth, old onions, and the faint sweetness of cornbread baked earlier for the evening rush. The kitchen lights buzzed softly, and in the distance, the hum of the industrial fridge rattled like a crooked heartbeat. The old man sank onto a wooden chair near the back prep table, still clinging to the wooden box as if it were tethering him to the earth. His lips were pale, and his eyes darted to the door. "You're safe here," Naomi said gently, grabbing a folded blanket from the storage shelf. "Nobody's going to bother you." He didn't answer. His gaze dropped to his shoes, cracked leather nearly falling apart, and he shivered again. "Let me get you something warm," she said. She moved toward the stove, reheating a leftover bowl of vegetable soup. The steam curled upward, bringing the room to life. She placed the bowl in front of him with a spoon and tore a piece of soft bread from the fresh loaf on the cooling rack. "Eat slowly. It's hot." For the first time, he looked up at her, truly looked. His eyes were tired but searching, as though he needed to confirm she wasn't a hallucination. "You didn't have to stop," he whispered, voice thin as thread. "Yeah, well," Naomi said, easing into the chair across from him. "The way I was raised, you don't leave folks freezing on the sidewalk. Cold nights aren't kind to anybody." He dipped the spoon into the soup, his hand trembling. The wooden box stayed tucked against his ribs, as if the old man feared the entire room might snatch it away. Naomi's gaze drifted toward it. The wood was old, hand-carved, polished by years of touch. Whatever was inside meant something important enough for him to risk wandering the streets at night. "Sir," she said carefully, "what's your name?" He froze, spoon halfway to his lips. His throat bobbed. Then, slowly, he lowered the spoon. "No name," he murmured. "Not anymore." Naomi blinked. "Well, you had one at some point." "Names," he whispered, eyes falling to the table, "cause trouble." "Trouble like those men back at the dairy plant?" His hand jerked slightly, the soup rippling in the bowl. Naomi leaned forward, voice low. "Who were they? Do you know them?" He clutched the box tighter. "You shouldn't have helped me. I didn't want anyone else caught up in this." The words hit Naomi harder than she expected. She'd been told versions of that sentence her whole life. You shouldn't get involved. You shouldn't try to help. You shouldn't care. But that wasn't who she was. She softened her tone. "Listen, I get it. You've been through something. I'm not asking you to tell me everything. I just want to make sure you're all right. That's all." He looked at her for a long moment, as though weighing her sincerity. Then he whispered, "I don't deserve kindness." The way he said it, emptied, hollow, believing every syllable, made Naomi's chest ache. "Everyone deserves kindness," she replied. "That's how I see it." Before he could answer, the swinging door banged open. Naomi flinched. Her supervisor, Carl Henderson, a red-faced man with a worn apron tied too tight around his waist, stomped into the room. "Naomi, what are you doing still here?" he snapped. "I locked up the dining area 10 minutes ago." She rose halfway out of her chair. I found him outside by the dairy plant. He was freezing. I brought him in, gave him soup." Carl's eyes narrowed at the old man. "We are not a homeless shelter. You know the policy. No vagrants after closing." "He's not a vagrant," Naomi said, heat rising in her voice. "He's in trouble." Carl scoffed. "They're always in trouble. Then you give them soup and suddenly they're here every night. You want a job or not?" The old man's shoulders hunched as if he were shrinking into the blanket. Naomi clenched her fists but forced her voice calm. "Carl, it's cold enough to kill somebody out there. He just needs a warm place for a little while. I'll stay with him." Carl jabbed a finger toward the door. "He leaves in 10 minutes. If you want to babysit strays, go do it at the bus station." He stormed out, the door swinging behind him. The room fell silent except for the soft whir of the fridge. Naomi sank back down, her jaw tight. "I'm sorry about that," she murmured. "Some people forget what it's like not to have somewhere safe to go." The old man looked at her with something almost like wonder. Why do you help people who can't give you anything back?" Naomi shrugged, her voice dipping quieter. "Because plenty of folks helped me when they had no reason to. It's how the world keeps spinning, far as I can tell." The old man stared at her, his eyes filling with something heavy and unspoken. Then he whispered, I wish more people saw the world the way you do. Naomi gave him a small, tired smile. Finish your soup. We'll figure out what to do after. He lifted the spoon again, hand still shaking, but steadier now than before. Outside, a car door slammed. Both of them froze. Another slam, then the crunch of several pairs of boots on gravel. Naomi moved to the window, lifting the edge of the curtain just enough to peek out. 3 black SUVs lined the curb. Men in dark coats and earpieces stood beside them, scanning the street. They weren't looking randomly. They were looking for someone. Naomi's breath caught in her throat as one of them raised a small device to his mouth and spoke into it. The old man whispered behind her, voice trembling. "They found me." Naomi turned back slowly, her pulse thundering in her ears. "Sir," she asked, "who exactly are you?" He swallowed hard. "No one," he said. "No one who should matter." But outside, the security team converged toward the building, and Naomi realized, with a chill running through her, whoever this man once was, he mattered enough for the world to come hunting for him. The crunch of boots on gravel grew louder, more deliberate. Naomi stepped back from the window, pulse slamming in her ears. The old man's fingers tightened around the wooden box until his knuckles whitened. Every breath he drew seemed to shake through his whole frame. Naomi lowered her voice. "They're outside. 3 black SUVs, men in suits, all of them look official." The old man closed his eyes as if bracing against something inevitable. "I told you," he murmured. "You shouldn't have helped me." Naomi leaned in. "Well, I did. And we'll figure out the rest. But right now, stay calm. You're not alone in this." He gave a weak, disbelieving laugh that sounded more like a cough. "No one's been with me in a long time." Before Naomi could answer, loud knocks rattled the metal side door. Sharp, commanding, not the kind of knock used by someone asking for directions. She flinched. Another knock followed, more insistent. "Open up! East Lake Community Services." Her eyes widened. Community Services wasn't who drove around in convoys and tactical boots. The old man's hand clamped onto her wrist. "Please," he whispered, "don't let them take the box." Naomi stared at him. "Why? What's in it?" His breath hitched. "My life. And someone else's future." The knocks grew louder, pounding now. Then a voice, deep and clipped with authority. "Ms. Brooks, we know you're inside. We need to speak with you about a missing person." Naomi's stomach dropped. Her name. They knew her name. A second voice, calmer but more intimidating, pushed through the door. "No one here is in trouble. We're simply ensuring the safety of a vulnerable individual." The old man trembled so violently that Naomi steadied him with both hands. "Sir, please," she whispered, "just tell me your name. Something. I can't help you if I don't know what's going on." He shook his head, panic swirling behind his eyes. "Names destroy everything. I've seen what they do, what mine did." The pounding stopped. Silence. Naomi's lungs tightened. She knew this kind of silence. It was the silence of people positioning themselves. People waiting for a cue she couldn't hear. Then her phone buzzed inside her apron pocket. Unknown number. She hesitated, then swiped to answer. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, quiet, professional, and chillingly direct. "Ms. Brooks, this is Special Liaison Harper Grant. Please step outside. There is no threat to you. We are simply retrieving an elderly man who has been reported missing." Naomi's gaze darted to him. His lips moved without sound, begging her not to go. She swallowed. He's safe. He's warm. He's eating soup. Why didn't one of you come with a normal badge? Or anything that says liaison? The voice paused. Ma'am, for his protection, certain protocols were necessary. Protocols usually mean trouble, Naomi shot back, her voice low. And you're not answered my question. The woman exhaled softly through the line. Ms. Brooks, if that man is in your building, you may be placing him in danger by keeping him there. Naomi stiffened. And what danger would that be, from you? No answer. Just a click as the call ended. A cold prickle spread down Naomi's spine. She backed away from the door and turned to the old man. Okay, she whispered. Tell me one thing. Are those men out there trying to hurt you? The old man's eyes filled, not with fear but sorrow, something old and heavy. They're trying to bring me back. His voice cracked, and I can't go back. The knocks returned, 3 rhythmic raps that sounded like a command. Last chance, Ms. Brooks. Open the door. She looked at the old man. His face was gray, eyelids fluttering, breath struggling. He was getting worse by the minute. Outside, the silhouettes had shifted again, one now standing directly in front of the door's frosted window, a hand raised, ready to knock or force their way in. Naomi felt her throat tighten. Sir, please. If you don't tell me who you are, I can't protect you from... A metallic thud cut her off. Then another. The door frame vibrated. They weren't knocking anymore. They were trying to enter. The old man lurched forward, grabbing her sleeve with surprising strength. I can't go with them. Not until I know if she forgave me. Naomi stared at him, stunned. Who? His eyes watered. My son's mother. Before she could ask anything more, the door burst open. Men in black coats stepped inside, efficient, disciplined, sweeping the room with their eyes first, not their weapons. The woman who'd called, Harper Grant, walked in behind them. Her gaze locked on the old man. Relief flickered there. Real human relief. Thank God, she murmured. We found you. The old man sagged back in his chair. Harper turned to Naomi. Ms. Brooks, step aside. Naomi didn't move. He's freezing, Naomi said. He's barely breathing. You storming in here isn't helping. Harper studied her, expression unreadable. You don't understand. He is in danger. Naomi folded her arms. From what? From who? Harper hesitated, then softened her voice. From his own past. 2 men approached carefully. Naomi instinctively stepped between them and the old man. No, she said, not until someone tells me what's going on. He's terrified. Whatever he's running from, he's not ready to go. One of the guards stepped forward. Ma'am, please. But Harper lifted a hand, stopping him. She faced Naomi fully. Ms. Brooks, the man you're protecting is not a vagrant. He's Harold Benton. He disappeared 40 hours ago, and the entire Turner Tech Foundation has been searching for him. Naomi blinked. Turner Tech? As in, the billion-dollar Turner Tech? Harper nodded once. Yes. And the CEO is waiting to see his father. Naomi's eyebrows shot up. Father? She whipped her gaze to the old man. He closed his eyes, tears streaking down his cheeks. I didn't want him to find me, he whispered. Not like this. Naomi felt her heart sink. The world outside the dairy plant, the SUVs, the security, hadn't been hunting a criminal. They'd been searching for a missing man whose name carried enough weight to shake an empire. As the guards approached again, Harper stepped closer to Naomi and lowered her voice. He's not safe out here. Not with what he's carrying, and not with who's after him. Naomi's breath hitched. Who's after him? Harper's eyes darkened. People who think that box he's holding belongs to them. The old man tightened his grip around the box again, breathing fast and shallow. Naomi swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She'd only wanted to help a freezing stranger. But now she stood in the middle of something bigger, something dangerous, something tangled in secrets, and all she knew was one thing. This man wasn't just lost, he was being hunted by his own past, and Naomi had just stepped into the crossfire. The air in the kitchen felt too small, too thin, as if the walls had shifted closer with every breath. Naomi stood rooted to the floor, her body tense, her mind racing through possibilities she wasn't prepared to face. Harold Benton, if that really was his name, leaned against the chair, his breaths short and ragged. The wooden box was locked in his trembling grip, as essential to him as oxygen. Harper Grant gave her agents a subtle nod, and two stepped forward. Their movements were slow, deliberate, trained to calm rather than escalate. But the moment they reached toward Harold's arms, Naomi reacted before she had time to think. She stepped in front of him, arms spread, her voice firm. "Don't touch him!" It came out louder than she intended, echoing through the empty room. The agents halted, surprised. Harper's eyes flicked toward Naomi, one brow lifting. "Ms. Brooks, I understand your concern, but you are interfering with an emergency retrieval." "He's terrified," Naomi said, lowering her voice but not her resolve. "Look at him. He's shaking so bad he can barely breathe. Whatever he's running from, this—" She gestured toward the armed men, the suits, the cold professionalism. "Isn't helping." Harper took a step closer, her hands open and visible, as if approaching a frightened animal. "He needs medical care. He's been out in the cold for hours. His son is worried sick. We're not here to harm him." The old man looked up then, eyes clouded, voice cracking. "No, no hospital. Please, not like last time." The room fell silent. Naomi turned. "Sir, what happened last time?" Harold swallowed hard. "They came. They said they wanted to help, but they took everything I had left, every piece of who I was." Naomi felt a dull ache settle in her chest, heavy and familiar, the feeling you get when someone's pain hits too close to your own. Harper softened her tone. "Mr. Benton, we only want to get you warm and safe. Your son Elias has been searching for you nonstop since you disappeared. He's frantic." The man squeezed his eyes shut, as if the mention of his son was a blow. "He doesn't want me," he whispered. "He wants the things I carried, the things I tried to protect." Harper's jaw tightened subtly. Naomi caught it. A flicker of something. Guilt? Frustration? Truth? Passed through the woman's expression before she smoothed it away. "Ms. Brooks," Harper said calmly, "I need you to step aside. We've wasted enough time." "No," Naomi said again, though her voice was quieter. "Not until he says he's ready. We don't have time for this. And he doesn't have the strength to fight all of you." The two women stared at each other, one standing in polished government shoes, the other in worn-out sneakers from the clearance rack. There was a world between them, stitched from different lives, different losses, different kinds of fear. Harold suddenly slumped sideways, gasping. His fingers clawed at the edge of the table. Naomi spun toward him. "Sir? Hey, look at me. Can you breathe?" His breath was shallow, sharp, fluttering like a candle about to go out. Harper snapped her fingers. "Get him up, carefully!" Two agents moved in, lifting Harold under the arms. Naomi stayed close, guiding his head, making sure he didn't fall forward. As they helped him toward the door, Harold's eyes lifted to hers, panic swirling. "Don't let them take the box," he whispered. "Promise me." Naomi squeezed his hand. "I'm not leaving you. That's my promise." He nodded faintly, reassured. But the moment they reached the hallway, Carl, the supervisor, stepped in, blocking their way. He looked between Naomi and the agents with a mix of irritation and suspicion. "What's all this?" he demanded. "Why are there men in suits in my kitchen at this hour?" Harper flashed a badge so quickly, Naomi barely caught the seal. "Federal Retrieval Operation. Step aside." Carl blinked, stunned, then huffed. "Well, maybe next time give us a heads up before you drag half the FBI into my building." "This is a community kitchen," Harper replied coolly, "and your employee may have saved a man's life." Carl snorted. "That's what she does. Takes in every stray that wanders through the door." Naomi's shoulders tightened, the familiar sting of being belittled tugging at old wounds. Harper gave Carl a dismissive glance, then turned to the agents. "Move." They headed for the exit. But something happened as they crossed the threshold. Harold's steps faltered. His knees buckled. His grip loosened around the wooden box, and suddenly he pitched forward, collapsing in the doorway, his breath turning shallow and desperate. Naomi dropped beside him. "He's not okay! He can't walk!" Harper's professional facade cracked, just for a moment. "Call for the ambulance! Now!" The hallway erupted with movement. An agent radioed for emergency medics. Another fetched a blanket. Harper knelt beside Naomi, pressing two fingers gently against Harold's wrist. His pulse fluttered, weak and irregular. "Sir, stay with us," Naomi begged. "Stay with me." Harold's fingers twitched. He turned his head toward her, seeking her voice more than her face. "Naomi," he whispered, "don't let me disappear again." Tears pricked her eyes. "I won't." Harper reached for the wooden box, but Harold jerked it away, clutching it with his remaining strength. Harper froze, surprised by the force still left in him. "It's okay," Naomi whispered. "You keep it. No one's taking it from you." He relaxed then, just a little. Sirens howled in the distance, growing louder. The glow of red and blue lights spilled through the glass as the ambulance pulled up. As medics rushed in, Naomi tried to stand, but Harold's hand caught hers again. "Come," he rasped. "Please, come with me." Harper frowned. "Ms. Brooks, this isn't necessary. He'll be transported by trained staff." Naomi stared down at the old man's pleading eyes full of fear, regret, and something deeper she couldn't name. "I'm going," she said. Harper exhaled, frustrated but resigned. "Fine, but stay out of the way." The medics hoisted Harold onto the stretcher. His grip didn't loosen. Not until she promised again, softly, "I'm right here." The stretcher rolled through the doors, into the cold night air, toward the flashing ambulance. Naomi followed, her steps steady, her heart pounding. The agents surrounded them, escorting the old man as though he were both priceless and fragile. As the ambulance doors swung open, Naomi climbed in beside him. Harper signaled to two agents to follow and stepped back. Before the doors closed, Harper leaned in and said, "Ms. Brooks, whatever you think this is, it's bigger. Much bigger. When we reach the hospital, you'll learn why." The doors shut with a metallic thud. Inside the ambulance, the sirens wailed to life, drowning out everything else. The night swallowed the sound as they sped toward the unknown, toward the truth that waited in the fluorescent halls of East Lake Hospital. And Naomi knew, deep down, that the moment she'd helped that trembling man on the sidewalk, her life had veered into a story she wasn't ready for. A story she had no way to escape. Not now. Not anymore. The ambulance tore through the East Lake streets, sirens slicing the night, while the city blurred past the windows. Inside, the cold, fluorescent lights washed everything pale. Harold Benton lay strapped to the stretcher, breaths shallow, eyelids fluttering like he was fighting sleep he couldn't afford. Naomi sat beside him, gripping the rail, her knees bouncing with nervous energy she couldn't control. A medic monitored his vitals, calling out numbers under his breath. Numbers Naomi didn't understand, but knew weren't good. The wooden box remained on Harold's chest, held there by both hands, as though letting go would kill him. "Sir," Naomi whispered, leaning closer. "You're gonna be okay. We're almost there." Harold's eyes cracked open. Something glassy and haunted swam in them. "You don't know what waits for me at that hospital," he murmured. Naomi frowned. "Your son, right? You said he wants to see you." A flicker of pain crossed his features. "He doesn't want me," he said. "He wants what he thinks I took from him." Before she could ask, the ambulance jerked to a stop. The back doors swung open, flooding the compartment with crisp winter air and flashing red and blue lights. The medics rolled Harold out, Naomi hurrying beside them while Harper Grant and 2 agents met them at the bay entrance. Inside the hospital, everything smelled of disinfectant and worry. Nurses rushed past, machines beeped in distant rooms, and the halls shimmered with that familiar sterile glow that made time feel slower, heavier. Harper guided the group toward a private wing at the far end of the corridor. "This area is secured," she said. "No press, no unauthorized personnel." "Press?" Naomi asked, startled. Harper didn't answer. When they reached a door labeled CCU, Critical Care Unit, a doctor in green scrubs stepped out to meet them. His expression tightened when he saw Harold. "Mr. Benton," he said, already snapping into urgency. "Get him inside." Harold stiffened, clutching the box tighter. "No, not without her." He nodded faintly toward Naomi. The doctor looked confused. He turned to Harper. "Family?" "No," Harper answered. "But she's involved." Naomi blinked. Involved wasn't the right word. She wasn't anything but a stranger who hadn't walked past a shivering old man on the sidewalk. Still, Harold wouldn't let her go. The doctor motioned for Naomi to follow. "Fine. Keep her close. But stay back once we begin." The room Harold was wheeled into felt bigger than most hospital rooms Naomi had seen. Machines lined the walls, their screens flickering like restless cityscapes. A nurse hung fluids while another placed sensors along Harold's chest. Naomi stayed near the wall, hands clasped, heart thudding. She watched the old man fight for breath, watched the fear, not of dying, but of something deeper, etch itself across his features. Finally, when the doctor stepped away, Harper approached the bed and spoke softly. "Mr. Benton, we need answers. Why did you leave the safe house?" Harold coughed weakly. "Because that place was never safe. Not from what matters." "And what matters?" Harper pressed. He turned his head toward Naomi as though she were the only person in the room. "Doing right by people, helping them when no one else will." Naomi felt her throat tighten. Harper exhaled sharply. "This isn't the time for philosophy. Your disappearance has caused a national alert. Your son. Harold shook his head. Elias doesn't want the truth. Naomi stepped forward despite herself. Sir, what truth? His gaze locked with hers, fragile and raw. That I never betrayed my family, he whispered. I never betrayed the company. I never betrayed him. Harper stiffened. Mr. Benton, we don't have all the facts. You don't want them, he rasped. No one ever did. They only wanted a neat story, a villain they could point to. The doctor returned just then, adjusting Harold's mask. His heart rate's too unstable for this kind of stress. He needs rest. Do you all want him to crash again? Harper stepped back, jaw clenched, but her eyes flicked to the wooden box. What's inside is critical to the Turner Tech board. We need to secure it. The second she reached toward the box, Harold gasped and clutched it tighter, his face contorting with panic. No, he cried. No, not yet. Naomi moved fast, placing herself between Harper and the bed. Back off, she said, voice trembling with fury. He doesn't want anyone touching it. Harper stared at her, shocked by her defiance. Miss Brooks, you have no authority here. And you have no right to terrify an old man who's hanging on by a thread. The agents behind Harper shifted uneasily, unsure whether to intervene. Harold's breathing steadied once Naomi stood beside him. He relaxed enough to speak again. My name, he whispered, voice crackling like old paper, is Harold Benton. Naomi nodded, holding his frail hand. Okay, Harold, I'm listening. He swallowed, the effort immense. 40 years ago, I found something inside Turner Tech. Something wrong. Something big enough to ruin lives. He looked at Harper now, eyes sharper despite the haze. I tried to protect my son from it. Naomi felt the tension in the room shift, like every molecule was listening. Harold continued. But someone told Elias I was the one who caused the damage, that I betrayed him. They forced me out, erased my name, buried me. Naomi's heart clenched. So you disappeared. I had to, he whispered. There were people who wanted the truth gone, people stronger than me. I lived out of sight, survived however I could, and all these years, I held on to the last things that proved I wasn't the villain. He laid a trembling hand on the wooden box. Naomi whispered, and that's what's inside. He nodded. Everything. The truth. Proof of who lied, and who saved the company from collapsing. Harper's eyes widened. Her mask of professionalism cracked, revealing the shock beneath. Harold, she breathed, if what you're saying is real, this could destroy Turner Tech. The old man closed his eyes. Tears slid from their corners. Or save it, he whispered. Depends who holds the truth. Naomi's pulse hammered, her body chilled by the weight of his words. The doctor approached again. We need to run more tests. Everyone except Ms. Brooks, step out. Harper frowned. Why her? Because his vitals stabilize when she's near. The doctor said simply. I don't know who she is to him, but she's helping. The agents filed out. Harper hesitated at the door, staring at Naomi with growing disbelief, as if trying to solve a puzzle that didn't add up. When they were alone, Naomi pulled a chair beside Harold. You should rest, she whispered. His hand tightened around hers with surprising strength. Naomi, there's more you need to know. She leaned in. Okay, tell me. Harold looked up at the ceiling, breath trembling. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "they'll take you to meet my son." Naomi blinked. "Why? I'm just someone who helped you on the street." "No," he whispered. "That's why it has to be you." He turned his head toward her, eyes shining with something between fear and hope. "You're the first person in years who saw me as human." Naomi felt her chest ache. "And I need Elias," he whispered, "to see me the same way." His eyelids drooped as exhaustion overtook him, the wooden box still resting against his heart. A quiet hum filled the room, machines steadying, monitors glowing, with Naomi keeping watch in the dim, sterile light. And for the first time since the night began, she understood. Whatever truth Harold carried, it was about to pull her into a story far larger than anything she had ever known. Hours later, just before dawn, Naomi stepped out of the hospital's side entrance, rubbing her arms against the cold. The sky over East Lake was still a deep blue, trembling on the edge of morning. Her mind had barely settled from Harold's revelations when Harper Grant intercepted her beside the smoking shelter. "Ms. Brooks," Harper said quietly, hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid but not hostile. "A word." Naomi exhaled, weary but alert. "What now?" Harper gestured toward a black SUV idling nearby, its headlights dimmed. "We need to retrieve something Mr. Benton dropped earlier tonight. Something of importance." "You mean the wooden box?" Harper shook her head. "Not the box, something else. Something he guarded with equal urgency." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "And you're the only person he trusts to touch it." "Why me?" Naomi asked, voice cracking from fatigue. "For reasons I don't understand yet," Harper admitted. "But our team searched the street where you found him. We found footprints, signs of struggle, and a torn strap from his coat. Whatever happened out there, it wasn't just disorientation." A cold shiver slipped down Naomi's spine. "So, what are you asking?" "We're returning to the dairy plant," Harper said. "I want you to walk us through what happened. Exactly where you found him. Exactly what he said. I need clarity before Elias Turner arrives." The name landed between them like a weight. Harold's son. The billionaire. The man who'd built an empire on top of a foundation his father claimed was cracked. Naomi hesitated, thinking of Harold lying weak and afraid in the hospital bed. Then she nodded. "All right, let's go." The drive to the dairy plant was silent except for the hum of the engine. Snow flurries drifted in the headlights, catching on the edges of abandoned buildings and fences. When the SUV rolled to a stop in front of the plant, the wind off the lake cut cruelly through the air. The place looked even more haunted in the early light. Gray, hollow, gutted by decades of rust and neglect. The broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The wide metal doors hung crooked, as if pulled by ghostly hands. Harper motioned for 2 agents to flank them. Naomi pulled her jacket tighter and stepped through a gap in the fence, her breath forming small clouds. "This is where I found him," she said softly, pointing to the concrete barrier where Harold had sat hunched, clutching the box. Harper nodded. "And then he saw lights inside?" "Yes, flashlights, like someone was sweeping the room." Naomi swallowed hard. "I thought it was just squatters or, I don't know, but then the men came out." Harper scanned the cracked pavement, eyes sharp. "Show me where they approached." Naomi led them toward the side entrance, the one she'd glimpsed shadows behind just hours earlier. A thick padlock dangled from the latch, but it hung open. The metal twisted as though someone had forced it. Harper knelt, studying it. "This wasn't broken by our team," Someone else was here. An agent moved ahead, pushing the creaking door inward. A chill, stale gust spilled out, thick with dust, old milk rot, and the faint metallic tang of machinery long dead. Naomi hesitated at the threshold. Her heart crawled upward into her throat. Inside, the darkness exhaled. Harper clicked on her flashlight. "Stay close." Naomi stepped in. The beam cut through layers of dust and shattered glass. Broken crates, rusted railings, and old conveyor belts sprawled like skeletons of the factory's former life. The sound of dripping water echoed through the cavernous space. And then, something new. Naomi stopped cold. "Wait," she whispered. "That wasn't here before." In the middle of the floor, half buried under debris, lay a scatter of papers, neat at first glance but bent and dirt-smeared as if dropped in haste. She knelt and lifted one. It bore the Turner Tech logo. Harper crouched beside her. "Do not touch anything else," she warned, snapping on gloves. "We need to document this." But Naomi's eyes weren't on the papers anymore. Her gaze drifted across the room, where a folding table stood surrounded by portable lamps. Lamps that were still warm, faintly ticking as they cooled. Beside the table sat 3 hard cases, unlatched and open, filled with surveillance equipment. Someone had been here. Recently. "Harper?" Naomi said slowly. "I think they came looking for him before you did." Harper's flashlight beam shook faintly as she examined the cases. "These aren't ours," she muttered. "These are black market builds, professional, but unregistered." A second agent called out from the far side of the room. "Ma'am, found something!" They rushed toward him. He pointed the flashlight downward. There, in the dust, barely visible, was a smear of dried blood. Naomi's breath caught. "Is that—" Harper knelt again, her jaw tense. It might be his, or someone else's. Either way, he wasn't alone when he came here. Naomi stepped back, feeling suddenly exposed, as though eyes were still watching from somewhere unseen. The agent beside her crouched to examine the debris, and his hand brushed against something small, half hidden under a bent metal grate. "Wait, what's this?" He lifted it. Naomi's stomach dropped. It was a torn corner of a photograph. Not just any photograph. The missing half showed Harold, much younger, standing beside a smiling woman Naomi didn't recognize. But her attention snapped to the ragged bottom edge of the picture. Someone had written a date, and beneath it, one word, barely legible but unmistakable: "Forgive." Naomi reached out, tracing the torn edge with her fingertip. "He said he came here to know if someone forgave him," she murmured. "This must be her." Harper exchanged a sharp glance with her agents. "Bag every piece, we need the full photo, and we need to find who ripped it." Suddenly, a loud metallic thud echoed from the upper catwalk. Naomi jerked her head toward the sound. Another thud, a shadow moved. One of the agents drew a flashlight and aimed it upward. "Someone's here!" "No," Harper snapped. "No weapons drawn. We don't know their intent." The beam swept across the catwalk, illuminating a figure darting behind a pillar before disappearing deeper into the building. Naomi's breath froze. "Who was that?" Harper's expression hardened. "Someone who doesn't want us uncovering what Harold left behind." "But they left all this equipment," Naomi whispered. "They didn't expect us to show up this fast," Harper replied. "Or that you'd bring Harold somewhere they couldn't reach him." The realization hit Naomi like a cold slap. She hadn't just rescued an old man. She had stolen him, unintentionally, from the people who got here first. People who weren't done looking. Harper straightened. Everyone out. Now, we sweep this area again with full backup. Naomi hesitated, glancing back at the scattered papers, the broken lock, the folding table still warm from use. What happens next? She asked. Harper's eyes met hers. Next, she said quietly, we take this to Elias Turner, and he decides what happens from here. The wind howled through the broken windows, rattling the rusted pipes like distant chains. And Naomi realized something chilling. She wasn't simply walking into Harold's past. She was walking into a war she didn't understand. A war that had already begun long before she stepped into the cold East Lake night. By the time Naomi and Harper returned to the hospital, dawn had settled into a pale, washed-out gold. The snow flurries had thinned, but the cold remained sharp enough to bite at exposed skin. Naomi stepped through the revolving doors, expecting to see the same exhausted quiet she'd left earlier. Instead, the lobby was buzzing. Security officers swarmed the desk. Hospital administrators whispered urgently. And standing in the center of it all, back straight, expression iron-walled, was Elias Turner. Naomi froze. Even in his 70s, he carried himself with a presence that filled the entire lobby. Silver hair perfectly combed, tailored charcoal coat dusted with snowflakes, gloves tucked neatly under one arm. His face was a study in cold control, sharp jawline, highbrow, and eyes that flicked over everything like a scanner. Not angry, not frantic, detached, calculating. As Naomi and Harper approached, all conversation in the room seemed to pause. Elias's gaze locked onto Naomi instantly. "You're the woman who found my father." His voice was smooth, quiet, but heavy enough to command a room. Naomi swallowed. Yes, sir. I helped him last night." Elias stepped closer, studying her as if she were a problem to solve, or a potential threat. "Ms. Brooks," he said, "my father has been missing for 48 hours. You were the last person with him, so I need to understand exactly what you saw." Harper intervened, stepping in front of Naomi. "Sir, Ms. Brooks is cooperating. She's given a full account, and your father has confirmed, multiple times, that she assisted him." "Assisted?" Elias repeated, his eyebrows raising just slightly, voice never rising. "Or inserted herself into a matter she does not comprehend." Naomi's throat tightened. There it was. That sting. The same one she'd felt 100 times growing up. The same one she'd felt working at the soup kitchen. That quiet, subtle way some people let you know you didn't belong. Like kindness could only be suspicious if it came from someone like her. "I wasn't trying to interfere," Naomi said softly. "I just didn't want him freezing outside." Elias didn't blink. "He doesn't wander," Elias said. "He doesn't collapse in alleys. He doesn't cling to strangers. He is careful, so forgive me if I find it unlikely that he simply chose to trust you." Naomi stiffened. "Sir, your father was in trouble." "And how fortunate," Elias said coolly, "that you were there." Harper cleared her throat sharply. "Mr. Turner, with respect, Ms. Brooks has been vetted, and we found evidence inside the dairy plant suggesting your father was being pursued." Elias turned. "Evidence?" "Yes," Harper replied. "Surveillance equipment, broken locks, blood traces, unregistered gear." Naomi stepped in. "And there was a photo, torn, someone he cared about. He must have gone there looking for answers." "So you opened the box?" Elias asked suddenly. Naomi blinked. "What box?" "The wooden one," he said, eyes narrowing. The one my father carries everywhere. She shook her head. No, I didn't open anything. Elias studied her face, searching for the smallest flicker of deceit. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it. His posture shifted a fraction. Tension eased from his jaw. Good, he murmured, because inside that box are documents that could damage lives, destroy companies, shift power structures. Naomi felt a cold ripple slide down her spine. Even Harper looked thrown by that admission. Sir, Harper said carefully, with information like that, your father is a target. Was a target long before last night, Elias replied. And the people who want those documents will not stop. Then he turned back to Naomi. Show me, he said. Naomi blinked. Show you what? The exact place you found him. The exact way he was sitting. The exact direction he came from. Elias gestured stiffly. If I'm going to understand what happened to my father, I need to understand what he trusted. Naomi felt heat press behind her eyes. Not from fear, but something deeper, something bruised. He trusted me because I was the only one who treated him like a person, she said quietly. Not an inconvenience, not a problem, just a human being. The silence that followed stretched long. Then, to her surprise, Elias's eyes softened. Barely, but enough to see something crack through the cold exterior. He used to say that, Elias murmured. People forget I'm a person first. Before Naomi could respond, Harper's radio crackled to life. Grant, we've got a situation up here. Harper stepped aside, listening. Static. Then, you need to get to ICU, now. It's Mr. Benton. Naomi's heart plummeted. What happened? She asked. But no one answered. Elias didn't wait for details. He started toward the elevators with long, urgent strides. Naomi followed on instinct. When they reached Harold's room, nurses were rushing in and out. Machines beeped in frantic rhythm. A doctor shot orders across the room. Naomi saw Harold on the bed, pale, trembling, breathing shallow and uneven. Her chest squeezed. Harold? She whispered. He turned his head toward her voice, slow, weak, and his eyes found hers. Naomi, he rasped, barely audible. Don't. Let them. Take it. Elias leaned closer. Take what, Dad? What are you talking about? Harold's hand searched blindly until Naomi took it. His fingers tightened around hers with the last strength he had. The truth, Harold whispered. The truth they buried at the dairy plant. His breathing hitched. It wasn't me. Elias froze. Dad, he said softly, fear bleeding into his voice. What wasn't you? Harold's chest rose once, twice, shuddered. Please, he whispered to Naomi, help me. Finish what they destroyed. Then the monitors spiked. A nurse shouted for more hands. Naomi felt Harold's grip loosen, sliding from her fingers. Harold! Harold! Elias's face drained of color. Harper grabbed Naomi's arm to pull her back as the medical team surged around the bed. Ms. Brooks, step aside. He's crashing. Naomi stumbled against the wall, her breath shaking, eyes locked on the man she'd pulled from the cold just hours earlier. And as the machines wailed, she understood something with absolute clarity. Harold Benton hadn't told her everything, not even close. But whatever truth he carried, Someone else wanted it badly enough to kill for it. And now, whether she wanted to be or not, she was the only one he'd entrusted to see it through. The ICU hall felt colder than the winter blowing outside. Naomi stood frozen, her breath shallow, staring through the glass as doctors worked over Harold's trembling body. Machines beeped in uneven rhythm. A nurse called out vitals. A doctor ordered another injection. The chaos made the room feel smaller, tighter, suffocating. But it wasn't just the medical urgency that weighed on the air. It was Elias. He stood completely still beside her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his knuckles white. For the first time since she'd met him, the mask of controlled calm he wore like armor began to crack. His eyes stayed locked on his father, but beneath the stoic exterior was something raw. Fear, guilt, and a grief he didn't know how to carry. "He recognized you," Harper said gently to Naomi. "He held on until you arrived." Naomi nodded weakly, gripping the railing as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. "He said he didn't do it," she whispered. "Whatever they accused him of, he said he didn't do it." Those words struck Elias like a physical blow. He turned his head sharply. "What did he tell you?" His voice trembled, barely, but enough for Naomi to hear it. "That he wasn't the one who betrayed Turner Tech," she said softly. "That someone else set him up. And that the truth is connected to the dairy plant." Elias looked away, pacing a few steps before stopping abruptly, his entire body rigid. For a moment he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was tight, forced. "My whole life," he murmured, "I believed he walked away, that he abandoned all of us, that he caused the collapse of everything we'd built. The board said they had proof. My mother, she spent years trying to understand why he would do it." Naomi felt a sting behind her ribs. "And he says he didn't." "And I don't know what to believe anymore," Elias admitted, his voice cracking like old glass. "If he was telling the truth all this time, then I wasted decades hating a man who was innocent." He looked at her, truly looked, not with suspicion, but with something close to desperation. "What did he show you? What did he say before this?" Naomi shook her head. "Just that someone was after him, and that the truth was hidden all these years." Before Elias could respond, the doors burst open. Two members of his private security team hurried down the corridor, whispering urgently into his ear. Elias's face hardened instantly. "What do you mean you lost visual?" he snapped. "You said the perimeter was clear." Naomi's stomach tightened. "Lost visual on who?" she asked. Harper stepped between her and the men. "Who exactly is still following Harold? We saw no one inside the dairy plant." "There were footprints in the snow," one guard said. "Fresh ones, leading into the tree line. And a second set, larger, following behind." Naomi swallowed. "Someone else was there the night I found him." "And they didn't get what they were after," Elias said, voice dropping low. "Which means they're not finished." A chill rippled through her. She thought the strange figures that night were his security team. But what if some weren't? A doctor pushed through the ICU doors just then. His expression was firm but compassionate. "We've stabilized him," he said quietly, "but he came dangerously close. Stress is a trigger. Any emotional or physical strain could bring on another episode." Naomi exhaled shakily. Elias closed his eyes with relief, but only for a moment. "Can we speak with him?" "Not yet," the doctor warned. "He needs rest and calm." Calm, the one thing no one in this hallway had. But despite the warning, Elias approached the window and looked in on his father again, his expression trembling between heartbreak and fury. Naomi moved to stand beside him. "You still have a chance," she whispered. "He's still here. You can still talk to him. Ask him yourself." Elias remained silent for a long time, then said softly, "You don't understand. My father and I, we haven't spoken more than a few strained sentences in 40 years. Every time we tried, we ended up throwing the past at each other." Naomi's voice gentled. "Then maybe this time, don't talk about the past." Elias turned to her, his eyes tired, lost. "What would you talk about, Ms. Brooks, if you had wasted 40 years being wrong?" Naomi swallowed hard. "My mother," she whispered. "I would talk about her. I'd talk about everything I missed while I was busy trying to survive. And I would tell her that I wish I had known her better before I let the world make decisions for me." Her voice faltered. Silence covered them like a thin sheet. Then, the room erupted in movement again. Harold had regained consciousness. The doctor hurried inside. Nurses followed. Elias remained frozen at the door, unable to make himself cross the threshold. Naomi, without thinking, laid a hand on his arm. "Go," she said. "He's waiting." The simple word hit him with more weight than she intended. Elias hesitated. Then he stepped in. Naomi stayed just outside, heart pounding. Inside, Harold turned his head, eyes glassy but aware. "Elias," he whispered. Elias stopped short, breath catching in his throat. "I'm here, Dad." Harold blinked slowly, pain etched across his face. "You came." "I should have come a long time ago," Elias said, voice breaking. "I should have listened. I should have—" "This isn't your fault," Harold murmured. "You were fed. They're lies." "Lies about what?" Elias asked. "Who framed you? Who wanted you gone?" Harold's jaw trembled. He tried to lift his hand, but it fell weakly onto the sheets. "Not here," he whispered. "Too many ears." Elias leaned in. "You're safe. You can tell me now." "No." Harold's eyes sharpened with sudden urgency. "You're not listening. It wasn't just the company. It wasn't just money. It was bigger. It always was." "Dad," Harold wheezed, struggling to breathe, and Naomi instinctively stepped into the doorway. Harold saw her instantly. His face softened. "Naomi, thank you for saving me." Naomi swallowed a lump in her throat. "I didn't do anything special, Harold." "You saw me," he rasped, "when no one else would." Then the truth she wasn't prepared for landed with one final trembling breath. "You are the only one I trust to finish this." The monitors beeped steadily behind him, but the room itself went still. Naomi felt all the air leave her lungs. Elias stared at her like he didn't understand what he'd just heard. Like he wasn't sure who this young woman was, or why his father had chosen her over everyone else. Harold closed his eyes again, not unconscious, but exhausted, drifting. And in that fragile lull, in that quiet between storms, the real war began to form. Not the one Naomi had walked into, the one she would now have to lead, because Harold Benton had spoken his truth, and his truth would upend the lives of everyone in that room before the night was over. When the medical team finally cleared the ICU and dimmed the lights, the corridor fell into a heavy, waiting silence. Snow tapped softly against the tall window at the end of the hall. The world outside blurred in white. Inside, everything felt sharp. Every breath, every heartbeat, every unspoken word. Harold was stable, but barely. sedated, monitored, suspended between exhaustion and the fragile thread that kept him here. Elias stood at the foot of the bed, staring at his father with an expression that looked like a man reliving every mistake he'd ever made. Harper excused herself to take a call down the hall, leaving Naomi alone with the billionaire, an arrangement Naomi would have avoided if she'd had the strength to walk away. But she didn't. She couldn't. She eased into the chair beside Harold's bed, her palms gently smoothing the blanket, brushing the hair off his forehead, the way a daughter might care for an aging parent. She hummed something soft, something her own mother used to hum on nights when rent was late and the lights flickered off. A lullaby meant to hold broken things together. She didn't notice Elias watching her until she felt his presence shift closer. "You don't have to do that," he murmured. Naomi kept her eyes on Harold. "I know." "Then, why?" She paused, her voice low, steady. "Because someone should." Elias inhaled slowly, as if he hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath since he stepped into the room. He looked at his father again, eyes wet despite his efforts to hide it. "He pushed everyone away," Elias whispered. "Even my mother. Even me." "No," Naomi said quietly. "He was pushed too." The words were simple, but they hit him harder than anything she'd said before. "You believe him," Elias said, studying her. "You believe he didn't betray Turner Tech." "I believe he wasn't lying when he looked at me," she answered. "I've seen real guilt before, real shame, real fear." She swallowed. "And I've seen real innocence. He wasn't running from what he did. He was running from what was done to him." Elias looked away, jaw clenched. Naomi stood, stepping around the bed to adjust the pillows and the thin hospital sheet. She worked with the careful hands of someone who had done this too many times for strangers no one else bothered with. People forgotten. People dismissed. People like Harold. People like her. "You've barely left his side," Elias said, almost in disbelief. "He was alone for too long," Naomi whispered. "He shouldn't wake up alone again." Her kindness lingered in the room, warm despite the cold storm outside. Elias exhaled, long, shaky. "You care for him," he said quietly. "I care for people," Naomi corrected gently. "All people. But him, he reminds me of things I don't talk about." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Growing up, folks used to say I didn't have value, that my kindness was naive, that I was wasting time on people who'd never repay it. Sometimes they still say that." Elias stared at her, a man who had lived his whole life with boardrooms bowing at his feet, listening to a truth they never taught at the top. "My father," he murmured, "spent his life telling me kindness was weakness. Strategy over sentiment," he used to say. Elias laughed softly, bitterly. "Now here you are, a stranger, doing for him what I never could." Naomi looked up at him, her expression soft but unflinching. "It isn't weakness," she said. "It's a different kind of strength." Before she could sit back down, Harold stirred faintly, his head turning the slightest bit toward Naomi's voice. She reached for his hand instinctively. His fingers curled weakly around hers. The monitors steadied. Elias watched, stunned, as the smallest shift of peace washed over his father's face. "You see that?" Naomi murmured. "He knows he's safe." Elias's throat tightened. "He never looked like that. Not even when I was a child." Naomi didn't respond. She didn't need to. What Harold had found in her, trust, comfort, human connection, was something money could never buy, something power could never command. It was the simple, radical gift of being seen. A soft knock sounded on the doorway. A hospital social worker peeked in. "Mr. Turner," she said gently, "we'll need to discuss next of kin decisions in case his condition changes overnight." Elias nodded stiffly. Naomi felt his body tense. He wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared. But life doesn't wait for readiness. It demands honesty. "I'll step out," Naomi whispered. "No," Elias said quickly before he could stop himself. Then he faltered. "I mean, I'd prefer if you stayed, if you don't mind." Naomi hesitated, then nodded. The conversation was clinical, necessary, and painful. Naomi watched Elias grapple with every choice: resuscitation orders, transfer options, medical authority, all things a son should have understood long before this moment. He answered each question with a voice that shook more each time. When they were alone again, Elias pressed a hand to his eyes. "I wasn't there," he whispered, "when he needed me, when he was alone. I wasn't there for any of it." Naomi stepped closer. "You're here now." Elias looked at her, not as a billionaire, not as a man used to control, but as a son who finally understood how fragile time really was. He asked for a lawyer," Naomi said gently, "before he fell asleep." Elias's eyes flickered. "A lawyer? Why?" She hesitated. "He wants to change something." He straightened. "What change?" "I don't know," she admitted. "He didn't say. Just that it was important, and that it was for the future." Elias studied her in silence. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as an intruder in his world, not as a stranger his father inexplicably trusted, but as someone essential, someone his father chose. The monitors beeped softly as Harold slept, his breathing slow but steady. Snow kept falling outside, blanketing East Lake in white, muffling sounds, creating a strange, fragile peace. Naomi returned to the chair beside Harold's bed, adjusting his blankets again, humming softly. Elias stood against the wall, arms folded, watching her work with the quiet reverence of someone witnessing a miracle he didn't deserve. After a long time, he spoke in a low, steady voice. "When he wakes up," Elias murmured, "we're going to finish this. All of it. Whatever truth he tried to carry alone, we won't let him die with it." Naomi paused her humming. Her eyes lifted to his. "And we'll protect him," she said. Elias nodded. "And you," he added. Their eyes held for a moment, an unspoken pact forged in the dim light of the ICU, in the presence of a man who had suffered more years of silence than anyone should. Then, softly, Elias said something Naomi never expected to hear. "Thank you for giving my father a piece of peace I never could." Naomi lowered her gaze, humbled. Her heart tightened, but not from pain, from purpose, from the knowledge that something bigger than her, bigger than them all, was beginning. And whatever came next, she would not face it alone. Morning crept slowly through the hospital windows, washing the ICU hallway in a soft gray glow. Shadows stretched long across the tile floors, quiet and heavy, mirroring the weight inside Naomi's chest. She had stayed the entire night beside Harold, dozing lightly in the uncomfortable chair, waking at every shift of his breathing. Elias had left only once, to make a few calls, and even then, he'd returned quickly, pacing the hall like a man afraid the ground would disappear if he stopped moving. By 9 a.m., the cardiology team stepped out of Harold's room and motioned for them to come closer. "He's awake," the doctor said gently. "Weak, but alert. Just be mindful. No stress, no raised voices. He needs calm." Calm. In a story built on decades of buried truth, betrayal, and danger, calm felt impossible. Naomi slipped inside first. Harold was propped up against fresh pillows, oxygen tubes resting gently at his nostrils, his skin pale but his eyes clearer than they had been in days. Those eyes found her immediately, and something indescribably warm flickered there. "Morning," Naomi whispered with a small smile. "You stayed," Harold breathed. "I wasn't going anywhere." Elias entered the room quietly. His presence filled the small space instantly, but his voice was soft, careful. "Dad, you scared us." Harold's lips twitched in something like a faint, tired smile. "Scaring you is the only thing I've ever done successfully." Despite everything, Elias let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Almost. But the moment of levity passed quickly. Harold motioned weakly toward the chair beside him. "Naomi, come closer." She sat at his bedside, taking his fragile hand in both of hers. "There's something I need to do," Harold whispered. "Something I should have done long before the world turned its back on me." Elias frowned. "Dad, you don't have to—" "Yes," Harold interrupted, his voice thin but firm. "I do." Before either of them could ask what he meant, a knock sounded on the door. A man in a crisp charcoal suit stepped inside, carrying a leather portfolio. "Mr. Benton," he said quietly. "I came as quickly as I could." Elias stiffened. "Russell, you're my father's estate attorney." "Yes," Russell replied, nodding respectfully toward Naomi. "Mr. Benton requested I come immediately. He said it was urgent." The room sharpened with tension. Naomi blinked in surprise. "Harold, are you sure you're up for this now?" Harold squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "I'm running out of laters, sweetheart. It has to be now." Russell approached the bed. "We can keep this brief if needed. Mr. Benton, are you certain you wish to proceed?" Harold nodded. The attorney opened the portfolio and pulled out a stack of documents. "This is your updated estate plan. You asked that I bring the revised draft for final signature." Naomi frowned. "Revised?" Elias turned slowly toward his father. "Dad, what revisions?" Harold's breathing hitched, but he steadied himself before speaking. "My entire portion of Turner Tech," he said, his voice no louder than a whisper. "Every share, every patent, every residual right that is still legally mine." Naomi felt the room tilt. Elias leaned forward, brows drawn tight. "You want to return it to me?" "Dad, that's not necessary." Harold shook his head. "No," he said. And then he turned his tired eyes toward Naomi. "It goes to her." The silence that followed felt like the air itself had stopped breathing. Naomi froze. Elias blinked. Once, twice, unable to process what he had just heard. "I'm sorry." "What?" Harold lifted Naomi's hand, trembling. "She saved my life. Not just the cold night in East Lake. She reminded me of the goodness the world told me didn't exist anymore." Naomi stared at him, eyes burning. "Harold, no. I can't accept anything like that. I helped you because it was the right thing to do, not for— I know, he whispered. That is why you are the only one I trust with it. Russell adjusted his glasses. Mr. Benton has full capacity and competency. These documents reflect instructions he's been preparing quietly for several months. Months? Elias repeated, stunned. Harold nodded. I knew they were coming for me, he said. The people who ruined everything 40 years ago. I knew they'd try again. And before they do, I need someone who cannot be bought or intimidated to hold the truth. Naomi shook her head, overwhelmed. Harold, I don't understand your world. I'm not a CEO, I run a soup kitchen. Exactly, Harold whispered, a faint smile lifting the corners of his mouth. You have no angle, no greed, no shadows. You lead with heart. You see people. You care. So do I, Elias said quietly, wounded. Harold looked at his son with more tenderness than Naomi had seen between them. You cared about the company, he said gently. But Naomi cares about people. And what's coming next? The world will need someone like her. Elias stepped back, breath shaking. Dad, this is billions of dollars. This is the legacy you built. You're giving it to a woman you just met? Harold answered without hesitation. She is the only person who didn't want anything from me. That sentence cracked something in Elias, in Naomi, in the air itself. The attorney placed the final document on the portable table. All we need is your signature, Mr. Benton. Harold took the pen with trembling fingers. Naomi watched helplessly, tears forming, as he scrawled his name across the bottom of the page, each letter a testament to trust she wasn't sure she deserved. When he finished, he placed the pen down and exhaled weakly. It's done, Russell said quietly. Naomi pressed her hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. Elias stared at the signed document, then at Naomi, his expression a storm of disbelief, frustration, awe, and something else he couldn't yet name. Harold reached for Naomi again. Use it, he whispered, to finish what they tried to destroy, to help people the way you helped me. Naomi shook her head, tears slipping free. I don't know if I'm strong enough for something like this. Harold smiled faintly. You already are. He leaned back, exhausted, but peaceful. Russell gathered the documents. Elias stepped closer to Naomi, his voice low. You have no idea what you're stepping into. Naomi wiped her cheeks. Neither did your father. He still did what was right. Elias held her gaze. For the first time, the coldness was gone, replaced by something like respect, something like hope. He nodded slowly. Then let's finish this, he murmured, together. But deep beneath the relief, beneath the fragile calm, Naomi felt the shift. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of the storm Harold had been running from for 40 years, and now she was carrying the lightning. The wind had picked up by the time Naomi, Elias, and Harper reached the edge of East Lake again. Snow drifted sideways across the cracked asphalt, hissing softly as it landed on the abandoned dairy plant roof. The building towered above them like a ghost frozen mid-breath. Rusted steel beams, shattered windows, paint peeling in long horizontal strips. But tonight, it didn't feel empty. Tonight, it felt like it was waiting. Stay behind me, Harper instructed, scanning the shadows with a flashlight. We swept the area earlier, but I don't trust whoever was here before. They move like they know this place better than we do. Naomi tightened her coat. The cold bit at her fingertips, but the chill inside her chest came from something deeper. The weight of Harold's trust, the fear of what she might uncover, the uneasy knowledge that this building held the last pages of a story unfinished for decades. As they stepped inside, the old dairy plant groaned around them, metal shifting, wind slipping through broken vents. Their footsteps echoed across the concrete floor. The faint smell of old milk, machinery grease, and time-worn dust hung in the air. Elias moved quietly, his expression unreadable. He had barely spoken since leaving the hospital, but every time Naomi glanced at him, she felt the simmer of something unresolved. Grief, guilt, determination, all coiled tightly inside him. "Why would he come back here?" Elias finally murmured. "Of all places," Naomi shined her light over a row of collapsed milk crates, "because this is where the truth started, and where he hid whatever could clear his name." Harper led them down a hallway Naomi had never noticed before on her first frantic night here. The corridor was long and narrow, with rusted pipes running along the ceiling. At the far end stood a heavy steel door with a keypad lock. Its screen cracked, its frame gouged as if someone had tried to pry it open. "This was shut last time I was here," Naomi whispered. Harper nodded. "Someone's been working on this. Look, tool marks, fresh ones." Elias stepped closer, brushing frost from the metal with the back of his glove. He used to come home late during the early years of Turner Tech. My mother always asked where he'd been. He never told her. We thought he was having an affair. Naomi looked at him gently. He wasn't cheating. He was hiding from someone, or protecting something. Elias swallowed hard. Harper bent down beside the keypad. "The power's dead, but the lock isn't purely electronic. There's a manual release. Whoever built this wanted redundancy." "Can you open it?" Elias asked. Harper nodded. "Give me a minute." As Harper worked, Naomi wandered a few feet down the hall, her light catching on a small wooden sign bolted to the wall. "Benton Storage. Authorized only." Her breath caught. This was Harold's handwriting. She recognized the looping script from the labels on the wooden box he always carried. "Elias," she called softly. He joined her, and when he saw the sign, something inside him shifted. His shoulders dropped. His breath hitched. "He built this," Elias whispered. "All this time, he had a second workspace, a second home, and he never said a word." "Maybe he was protecting you," Naomi said gently. "Protecting your mother." Before Elias could respond, Harper's voice rang out. "Got it." The lock released with a heavy metallic clunk. The door groaned open, revealing darkness so thick it seemed to pulse. Harper swept her flashlight inside, and Naomi's breath left her. The room was not empty. It was a vault of memories. Blueprints covered the walls, pinned neatly with metal clips. Tables held stacks of journals, hand-drawn schematics, files marked with Turner Tech logos from decades ago. Polaroids hung from twine strung across the ceiling, photos of Harold in his younger years, smiling with groups of employees, standing beside machinery prototypes, delivering crates of food to factory workers. "He wasn't working against the company," Naomi whispered. "He was building it, from the shadows, quietly, lovingly." Elias stepped toward a table, picking up one of the journals. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were pages filled with calculations, sketches, and personal notes. A line halfway down the first page stopped him cold. "Elias will be great someday, if I can keep him safe from all this." Elias closed the journal slowly, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. "He wasn't avoiding me," he whispered. "He was trying to shield me. I spent 40 years resenting a man who spent 40 years protecting me." Naomi placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Parents love quietly sometimes," she said, "in ways we don't recognize until we're older." They moved deeper into the room. At the far back, beneath a hanging light fixture, stood a metal cabinet. Naomi approached it, drawn by instinct. The door creaked open, revealing carefully wrapped packets sealed with wax. "Harold's seal. And here," Naomi murmured, lifting the top packet, "is the truth he didn't want dying with him." The packet was labeled in Harold's handwriting, "Turner Tech, internal fraud, evidence." Elias stared at it, his voice barely audible. This could clear him. After everything, this could finally clear him. "And expose whoever framed him," Harper added. Before Naomi could open the packet, the light above them flickered. Harper stiffened. "Did you see that?" Another flicker. Then, a sharp metallic sound echoed somewhere deeper in the plant. Not machinery. Footsteps. Elias's face went pale. "Someone else is here." Harper pulled Naomi behind her. "Stay close. Do not wander." But Naomi wasn't thinking about danger now. She was thinking about Harold, about the man who had spent his life in the shadows so his son could stand in the sun. She held the wax-sealed packet against her chest, determination tightening inside her. "I'm finishing what he started." Before Harper could argue, another sound echoed closer, faster, sharper. Not footsteps. Running. Harper tensed. "Elias, get her behind cover." But Naomi took a step forward, scanning the darkness with her flashlight. A figure burst into view at the end of the corridor. Dark clothing, ski mask, moving fast. Harper drew a defensive stance. "Stop! Don't come any closer!" But the masked figure didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't hesitate. Naomi's heartbeat thundered in her ears. "Run!" Harper shouted. But Naomi didn't run. She clutched Harold's packet tighter and braced herself. Whatever storm Harold had carried, whatever truth he had died trying to protect, she would fight for it now, even if the darkness came straight for her. The masked figure sprinted toward them, boots hammering the concrete floor. Harper reacted first, shoving Naomi and Elias behind a rusted conveyor belt before stepping into the open, with one hand on her holster. "Stop!" Harper barked. "Turn around and show your hands!" But the figure didn't slow, didn't hesitate, didn't even look human in its desperation, more like a shadow slicing through dim light. Harper lunged sideways, grabbing a broken steel pipe off the ground and swinging it in a sharp arc. It collided with the intruder's wrist with a hollow crack. The packet in Naomi's hands shook as she ducked, shielding it beneath her coat. The masked figure stumbled, regained footing, then turned, not toward Harper, toward Naomi. Elias lurched forward instinctively. "Naomi!" But before the intruder could reach her, Harper tackled the figure from behind. The two crashed against a stack of old crates that toppled onto the floor in a thunder of splintered wood. The mask slipped off. Naomi froze. It wasn't some criminal from the shadows of East Lake. It wasn't a stranger. It was a man in his 40s, hair neatly combed, wearing a business ID tag clipped beneath his jacket. A Turner Tech ID. Harper pinned him with one knee. "Who sent you? What are you doing here?" The man panted, hatred burning in his eyes. "She has it. She has the evidence. We can't let her walk out of here." Elias stepped forward, rage creeping into his voice. You work for Turner Tech. Who gave you that order? The man glared up at him. Your father should have stayed buried. The words struck the air like ice. Naomi clutched the wax-sealed packet tighter. This wasn't just corruption. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a cover-up that had survived 40 years. Harper cuffed the intruder, securing him with a zip tie around a rusted pipe. We need to get out, she said. Now. There could be more coming. Elias nodded and turned to Naomi. Are you hurt? She shook her head, though adrenaline still shook her bones. No, I'm okay. Then Elias did something unexpected. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You protected the evidence, he said softly. You protected my father's name. Naomi swallowed hard. I promised him I would. They hurried back through the corridors, Harper leading, Elias close behind, Naomi in the center holding the truth Harold had carried for decades. When they finally stepped into the cold outside air, Naomi felt as though she'd crossed a threshold from one life into another. The storm was no longer coming. She was already inside it, but dawn was beginning to creep over East Lake, soft gold breaking across the snow-covered ground. A quiet reminder that morning always follows darkness. A week later, after statements, investigations, media storms, and legal battles emerging like wildfire, the world finally learned what Harold had been trying to expose. Turner Tech had been betrayed from within 40 years ago, not by Harold, but by a partner who had falsified documents and pinned the blame on him. The board had believed it. Elias had believed it. Even Harold's wife had believed it. But now the truth was out. The man responsible, now retired but living lavishly on stolen innovations, was publicly identified. Charges were filed. Apologies echoed across news networks. But for Harold, none of it had come soon enough. He passed quietly 3 days after the raid, with Naomi and Elias at his bedside. He slipped away holding Naomi's hand. His last words were a whisper. Thank you for seeing me. The day of his memorial, the sky above East Lake was a soft, forgiving blue. The service took place at the old dairy plant, not as it had been, but as it had become. Because Harold Benton's last wish had not been for more wealth. It had been for purpose, and Naomi Brooks was determined to honor that. The dairy plant had undergone a transformation that felt almost unreal. Broken windows replaced with warm amber panes, rusted metal polished or repainted. The once empty lobby filled with tables, shelves, heaters, and storage for food, clothing, and medical supplies. A large sign hung above the entrance. Harold Benton Community Center, a place for light. Inside, women ladled soup for anyone who needed it. Kids played near the back where old machinery once stood. A clinic room was stocked and ready. A job resource area was under construction. And at the center of it all stood Naomi, wearing a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, looking both humbled and proud. Elias approached her slowly. He'd be proud, he said quietly. More than you know. Naomi looked around the bustling building. He wanted people to have someplace to go, someplace safe. I'm just trying to build what he started. Elias nodded. And Turner Tech is officially funding the entire first-year operation. Plus the endowment my father left for you ensures this center will survive long-term. Naomi sighed softly. I never wanted his money. Which, Elias said with a faint smile, is exactly why he trusted you with it. He looked down at the polished wooden box Naomi now held. It had been cleaned and restored, the brass latch shining like gold under the lights. "You ready?" he asked. Naomi nodded. They walked together into the memorial hall. It was simple. Rows of chairs, a small stage, and photographs of Harold across the years, smiling with employees, sketching designs, delivering food, laughing with people whose names were never remembered in history books. Naomi stepped up to the podium and took a deep breath. "Harold Benton," she began, "was a man the world forgot long before he died, but he never stopped caring about the world." Her voice steadied as she continued. "He spent his life building things, technologies, ideas, hope, but what he built best were bridges between people who had nothing and people who had everything." She paused, scanning the room full of community members, Turner Tech employees, and strangers whose lives Harold had touched quietly and anonymously. "He taught me," she said softly, "that kindness isn't weakness. It's a legacy. And legacies aren't written in boardrooms. They're written in hearts." A hush fell over the room. Naomi placed the wooden box on the podium, her hand resting over it. "All he asked," she whispered, "was that we carry his light forward." When the ceremony ended, people filtered out slowly, lingering to share stories. Children ran around the hall. Volunteers set out evening meals. Life blossomed in the very place Harold once used as refuge. Elias joined Naomi outside on the steps overlooking the lake. Snowflakes drifted again, delicate and bright in the winter air. "You know," Elias said, tucking his hands into his coat pockets, "you changed everything." "No," Naomi said gently. "Harold did." Elias looked at her, really looked at her, with a warmth she hadn't seen before. "You gave him back his dignity," he said. "And in doing that, you gave me back my father." Naomi's breath caught. The lake shimmered under the morning sun, the world quiet and still. Elias gestured toward the building behind them. "This isn't just a center. It's a second chance for me, for Turner Tech, for this community. And I want you to run it, officially, permanently, with full support." Naomi's eyes softened, tears threatening but steady. "I'll do my best. You already have." She turned to gaze at the lake again, snow landing softly on her coat sleeves. Sometimes the world tries to bury you. Sometimes it tries to forget you. But sometimes, just sometimes, the world remembers. Because someone stops, someone helps, someone listens, someone loves without asking for anything in return. Naomi looked back at the building, warm lights glowing behind frosted glass, then down at the wooden box in her hands. She whispered to the winter air, "This is where every good thing began." And as the wind carried her words across East Lake, Naomi Brooks finally understood. Harold hadn't passed his legacy to hers because she was strong. He passed it to her because she was kind. And in the end, kindness was the brightest light of all. If this story touched your heart, drop a simple 1 in the comments. Just one number to let us know you're here, you're listening, and you believe kindness still matters. And if you want more stories like this, stories of grace, second chances, and people who choose compassion even when the world doesn't, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I promise, there's another story waiting for you, and you won't want to miss what happens next.